Let's get fucked up and have a good time and love each other.
Friends and weirdos. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Craig, and I was a co-host and contributor to the Pods and Sods Network, a podcast for the musically obsessed, for 10 years. I thought that perhaps something might inspire me to fire up the microphones and the recorder again. I wasn't sure what that would be or that it might be this soon. I have been in the King Gizzard rabbit hole for exactly a month at time of recording. As a Gizz noob, my goal here is to experience every album the way that I would as a kid, in front of my stereo with really big headphones on, listening to vinyl with the cover and artwork in hand. I think the inspiration was because of this. Not only was the music phenomenal, but the packaging was so fun to take in when I started to buy the records. This is a band where you need the physical product. The artwork is on par with the music created in terms of quality. So that's the mission statement in short. I'll get a bit into where I'm coming from musically and how I was pulled into the Gizz-verse. This is a term I don't feel comfortable using yet, to be completely honest. But I do want to throw some additional stuff out about the podcast. Some fan bases are real protective of their band and don't necessarily welcome new fans into the sphere, let alone podcasters. This is not a podcast that will be pulling in any income, and I don't want or need it to be successful. This came about solely from seeing the amount of new fans on Reddit asking for recommendations when I was in the early stages myself, and I wanted to document the journey through this discography because I think it's that important. I only ask you to listen if it's the sort of thing you might enjoy, and I hope you do. And if you don't, that's cool too. I just want a place to geek out about this stuff so that my girlfriend and immediate friend group don't have to keep absorbing it, as tolerant as they are, because I can get very hyper-focused on one thing, and at this moment, it's King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. I also know that there is already a very robust podcast, shout out to the Gizzverse podcast, and I hope it's obvious that I'm not trying to compete with them or anybody. I just want to provide some additional geeky chat to those people like me who simply can't get enough. For the most part, at least to start, I'll be talking alone into this microphone, which is something I haven't done, so apologies, I'm wordy. I would, however, love to have some friends on, new, old, those I haven't found yet. I encourage you to send voicemails, recordings, writings about the albums you love most, and I'll play them or quote them in the episodes as I get to those records if they come in. I'll also accept blog posts about this as well. Guests are a possibility at some point too. Let's see how this goes. And yes, I do plan on covering the official bootlegs too. Haven't yet decided where they'll fall, but I think in show date order along with the discography, either as part of that album's tour discussion or as a separate episode, depending on how much there is to talk about. So who out there can recommend the best official bootleg labels? I'm listening. What else can you expect? Aside from this podcast, which hopefully by now should be in your podcatcher of choice, GizzForTheNew.com will be a place for extended musical nerdery, starting with a guide to the official bootlegs and show release order, and expect in time some ridiculously detailed spreadsheets tracking set list stats and other silliness like that, because this is what I do. Not a level of nerdery that everyone will be into, but I do want to provide a resource for some different ways of viewing data. This is the kind of stuff I do for me. It just makes sense to share it in case somebody else might be into it. I would be remiss if I did not say at this point that kglw.net is the place you should go for information. The setlist archive and discography sections there are top-notch, with amazing texts on the shows, songs, and albums. Any data that is taken from their work in terms of set lists, etc., will, of course, receive proper credit, and I'm really not sure what you're doing if you haven't gone there yet. It's a treasure trove. On top of that, I'd like to chat with some of you who have made official bootleg reimaginings, feature some of you who make awesome art, whether it be on the podcast or just advertising your stuff here. That's what I would like this to become. There can't be enough places for people to find your cool stuff, so I'm hoping I can add to that. In time, of course. So with that, a bit about where I'm coming from, just to give you some background on what ears I'm bringing to this project, for better or worse. I was a Kiss fan for 40 years, since the age of 5, until I discovered Fish, who I realized was the amazing band that Kiss always claimed to be. Kiss and I have since broken up, and Fish was getting daily listens at various points over the last 10 years until I discovered Gizz. Before I go further into that, I'm also very into Steven Wilson and his band Porcupine Tree, my absolute favorites for years. I think Billy Corgan is one of the best songwriters of my lifetime. I will always covet the first two Duran Duran albums. I'm in my early 50s, and I love super old school hip-hop electro-funk. I love ABBA. I started a website documenting all the variants in the Monkees catalog because I'm consumed by those kinds of details. I love Wings more than I love the Beatles, and I love the Beatles. Don't at me. My favorite album is Shape by Frente, released in 1996. The only tattoo I have so far is the Crying Minotaur from Radiohead's Amnesiac artwork, inked after seeing them at the Gorge in 2001. To this day, one of the greatest shows I've ever seen. Those are probably the big ones, though I'm sure I'm forgetting something. Even so, enough of a general roundup so that you know where I'm coming from. So back to King Gizzard. While on a trip in Chicago with my girlfriend and my vinyl enthusiast to a ridiculous degree friend Sean, I came across a King Gizzard LP in a plant store. There's got to be some kind of joke that can be made here. And I remember saying that I really need to check them out after a friend was sitting in front of Trey from Fish at a King Gizzard show last summer. And when I got back, I asked my friends if anyone was familiar and if they had any recommendations, and as expected, they were all over the place. I listened to 2 or 3 albums that day during work, but I listened during work, which was not the optimal listening experience, and they were put to the side for a while. Side note, they were creeping into my algorithms by way of microtonal guitar video covers, which I was absolutely new to and thought were amazing. I believe one of the ones I watched was Billabong Valley, maybe on a Lego microtonal neck. I haven't gone back to check that out, but whatever it was fantastic stuff, and I was moving closer to true discovery, still hadn't gone back and listened to anything else yet. Then recently, a very dear friend who helped me navigate through Fish told me that he had just gotten into Gizz and was crushing their catalog recently, and I decided it was time to try again. I decided to look up video this time because I like a visual to go with a first listen, also less distraction, and my choice was, by complete chance, the 2022 KEXP performance to promote Ice, Death, Planets, Lungs, Mushroom, and Lava. I believe the first comment I saw had something to do with how you know some shit is going to go down during Iron Lung when Ambi... Do I need to have been a fan for a significant period of time to call him Ambi? I'll take answers to that. Started to unfurl the mic cord from the stand. That bit still plays in my head constantly, daily. That, Ice 5, and Magma, those 3 songs were a real strong start. Said friend, who we will call Rob, because that's his name, gave me a list of what to listen to first and then where to go depending on what I was into. That day started with Nonagon and Mind Fuzz, and it was safe to say that I was in at that point. Although there have been several moments over the past 2 months when I've stated that I guess I'm quote-unquote in now, such as the time that I spent my most recent birthday at the one store where I saw Gizz vinyl and cleaned them out, to just yesterday when I spent a small fortune completing the studio vinyl collection to have everything that I need to start this podcast. It's been a wild experience with the albums. I started a fairly dedicated listening to each album a few weeks back and just concluded with my listen to the extended version of The Silver Cord just yesterday, all purchased through Bandcamp in lossless, mostly high-res files. I'm only saying this to separate it out from the vinyl listening sessions that will be featured as part of this podcast, but also because you should support the art. If you are a streamer and you're getting into this band for the first time or just now, the files on Bandcamp are excessively cheap for higher res files. I recommend getting them. Also, don't trust streaming. Shit doesn't last forever. During the most recent round of listenings, the albums that jumped out most surprised me. But for now, I'll keep that quiet, and we'll see how each fares with an uninterrupted listen to all, excepting, of course, the vinyl side breaks. I like physical media. I've also made a set of mini discs with the King Gizzard discography. Why? Because I still have a mini disc recorder, a bunch of blank discs, and it's fun to use old media, but also it was a way to learn more as I started going through the catalog, because typing the song titles on a mini disc remote is a bonding and very time-consuming experience. There are people out there making King Gizzard 8 tracks, so it's nice to know that I'm not alone in this bit of fun. Technical notes. I will be listening to vinyl cleaned on a VPI 16.5 and played on a Technics, I believe it's pronounced both ways, SL 1200 MK2 turntable, fitted with an Ortofon bronze cartridge, using a Harman Kardon receiver for the phono stage and Sennheiser cans. HD 206s, not top of the line, but perfect for me. I may record externally during my listening so I can blurt out notes of approval and then come back to the mic later for something more coherent. You might get both, in which case perhaps I should apologize in advance. Podcast mic is a Shure SM58. I'm recording into a Zoom F4, and all podcast mixing and editing is done on Adobe Audition. That's way more detail than you needed, but there might be somebody out there that wanted to know. As for familiarity, I do have a pretty good knowledge of the catalog at this point, but more in terms of songs than albums, with a few exceptions. Every album has been listened to at least once at this point, with quite a lot of live shows being watched or listened to, so I know what one might call the hits. My list of favorites was changing just yesterday, so I'll again refrain from specifics there until I dive into the albums. The interwebs are full of comments like, I didn't realize a band could be this good in 2024, and was your life changed also when you first heard Gizz? What seems like hyperbole to me is really just an honest assessment. Sometimes a band hits you so hard at the most unexpected moment that all you can do is shake your head and say, how are they this good? And a lot of people say that when they discover this band. I'm still as musically obsessed as the day that Pods and Sods started in October of 2013, and I found one of the most perfect catalogs to immerse myself in. I hope you'll join me if you feel the same way, and if you do, let me know. If you are a friend of mine or a previous Pods and Sods listener, I can tell you there will be something you like from this band. I have given various friends who are into various things that I dislike and vice versa, they were able to find something to latch onto in this discography. There is something you will love in this discography, and I think that it will also lead you to discover other things that you may not have checked out. I can absolutely say that this was the case for me. And there is nothing in their discography that I have not liked. Nothing at all. If you want to get in touch, drop me a line at gizzforthenew@gmail.com. There will be contact links on the site. If you have something cool you're selling, whether you just want to feature it on the page of cool stuff that Gizz fans make, or if you want to talk about it, let me know. This is a place for that. The one thing that I loved immediately about this fan base was the amount of acceptance for new people, and I was really inspired by that. And really just what I want to do is have another place where people can feel welcome. So, welcome.
What the fuck?
I think this is going to be really good. You laid it out really well, what your intention is with the podcast, and also the heart of why you want to do these episodes. So I think that is key. The passion really comes through in it. So if you can deliver it like the way it's written, it'll be perfect. And I think it's going to be a really fun listen. I liked how detailed you got, even with what you will be using to listen to these albums, and kind of bringing to mind the image of really putting in the work with these records, sitting down, quality time with them, staring at the artwork. But I think it's going to be really good. I think that's really perfect. I think you have that would set the table, set the stage. Treat this kind of like as an introductory episode, and then you hit it with the first one and all the details, and you kind of get your bearings from there. So I think this will be a lot of fun. Man, no matter what, we cannot escape Kiss, can we? But it's hard not to. When you discover better artists as you get older, you're like, God, I was out of my mind. So good stuff, man. I very much look forward to it, and I think I'm gonna spin some Gizzard this afternoon now, because now I'm in the mood for some Gizzard.